Now joining us with a deeper look at all this is Sahil Kapur. He's national political reporter for Bloomberg News. Sahil, good morning.
Good morning.
Well, if the lawmakers in Washington are confused by the president, what are we supposed to make of the possibility of gun reform here?
Well, it's certainly baffling a lot of members of Congress, Democrats and Republicans, because the president kind of went out there and took a position for gun control against the politics within his party. But I think what most people are thinking is Republicans at least, stay in a holding pattern right now. Don't go against the politics because the president is mercurial. He's shifted before. You don't know if, as Jeff Flake put it to me, it's going to be the Tuesday Trump or the Thursday Trump. The president has an extraordinary ability to influence his party if he's consistent and methodical on this, given his credibility with the party base. But so far in immigration, he moved away from that stance after showing an intent to compromise at first, and he's beginning to do the same on guns.
Well, in terms of both immigration and gun safety reform, there have been a number of high-profile meetings and statements and all the rest. But legislatively, do you expect anything to be done this year?
Unlikely. I think there are no two issues that Republican leaders are more eager to avoid than gun control and immigration liberalization, as congressional primaries are coming up, and many of them are facing an electorate that does not want to go there with these two issues. So I think most likely we're looking at a Congress that just tries to keep the lights on for the rest of the year. No government shutdowns, no catastrophic debt defaults, and let the voters decide the rest of November.
Meanwhile, there have been some major personnel changes at the White House this week, and some potential personnel changes as well. Let's talk about Hope Hicks first. Very close to the president. How does this affect the president, do you think? It's
a momentous change because she's one of the few people, probably the only person, who's still in the White House, close to the president, in his inner circle, who's been with him before he was in politics, when he was in the private sector here in New York, all throughout the campaign, the transition team, the inauguration. And she rose to become communications director in the White House practically by default, because everyone else kept getting pushed out or getting fired or ended up leaving for one reason or another. So these are big shoes to fill. The important thing about her, I would say, is that unlike most people in the Trump orbit, she's kind of floated above the fray in a circle that's been defined by leaking and backstabbing and all sorts of nasty chaos. Yeah.
Well, speaking of the inner circle, those in and those out, there has been a dramatic conflict publicly between the president and his attorney general, Jeff Sessions. What do you make of that, Sahil? This is the first time we've actually seen Jeff Sessions push back on the president.
That's absolutely right, and I think Jeff Sessions is standing up for himself after a barrage of Twitter attacks from the president that's gone on throughout the year. It's highly unusual to see this. This is not a normal thing to see the president publicly feuding with members of his own cabinet.
What about the president's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, whose security clearance, top secret clearance, he lost it this week, and at the same time there are questions about his business relationships, and there are rumors of him fighting with Mr. Kelly as well. Is he at risk?
These are certainly dark days, I think, for the presidential son-in-law. It's been a rough week. He's lost his top secret clearance. He's in the crosshairs of special counsel Bob Mueller in the Russia investigation. He's millions of dollars in debt. We've learned that foreign governments are looking at ways to potentially manipulate him as a result of his complex business dealings with his family. And his status, I think, is probably more tenuous than it's been. But again, family members have a special place in the president's orbit. I suspect if he wants to stick around, he'll find a way.
But this chaos is having practical implications in terms of U.S. foreign policy, in terms of U.S. position on issues like trade. Yeah. The president's announced tariffs on the steel and aluminum industry came as a shock to most of his own advisors, including Gary Cohn. What can we learn from this, Sahil?
Well, so a few things. It was certainly abrupt the way it came about, right? No internal government review, no diplomatic strategy, no communication strategy to sell this and explain it. But nobody should be surprised that he did it. Trade protectionism and closed borders are perhaps the one consistency of Donald Trump's worldview since well before he was in politics.
But his own advisors did not believe he was there on this issue yet up until this week. Is that right?
And that's why we should take from this that President Trump only really listens to himself on the issue of trade. You're absolutely right that there's a division in the White House. Most members of his own party, the leadership in Congress, are not in favor of this. The most interesting thing here is that there's a threat of retaliation from the EU. Two of the companies that they're threatening to go after, Harley-Davidson and Kentucky Bourbon, headquartered in the home states of House Speaker Paul Ryan and Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell. That's not a coincidence.
Some very shrewd EU decision-making over there.
Very strategic, yes.
Sahil Kapur, we'll be talking more about those tariffs and the global implications coming up in the next hour. Thank you for your time, Sahil.
Thank you.